Buying the brand new Sony ZV-E1 and going from APS-C to full frame has really made me rethink how I approach buying cameras, because I had to redo all this stuff over again. It wasn't just like new camera, keep using the same lens. It's like I had to really reapproach some stuff, which made me want to approach today's topic, as you already saw when you clicked on the video. When you're getting ready to buy a new camera and like upgrade or just buy a camera in general, there's 5 things that I used to do in the past that I would never do again. That again, I had to do all this same stuff going from APS-C to full frame, that if you overlook these things, it's gonna cause way more problems than you think. The first one is knowing the intended use case of the camera I plan on buying and watching reviews where somebody is actually doing that thing or taking that into consideration. Because a lot of times, like for example, this camera came out, said it was supposed to be a vlogger's camera. I completely ignore the vlogger title and I think and replace that with content creator. If I'm doing podcasts, if I'm doing videos like this, if I'm doing client calls, and occasionally when I do travel, then I'm doing vlogging and I'm documenting my experience and stuff, I need to know my hierarchy of what's important to me when I'm watching reviews and stuff, and see if that person is doing any of those things. Because if they're not, it's not that the review isn't valuable to some extent. I just know that they're missing components. And sometimes you get so lost in the sauce of the features and this is cool and they can do all these things without even really considering what's your intended use case. So when you watch reviews, make sure you're watching it with your intended use case taken into consideration. Did that person do any tests around using that thing? Or was it just like a quick 30-minute, 1-hour test? Which I'm saying quick, but when you're doing batch recording like today, I'm recording a ton of content. Yesterday, I recorded a ton of content. Is the camera holding up? Or is it shutting down and overheating 30 minutes in? The answer is no. Then anything else, kind of like knowing what to pay attention to a point. But if you're watching reviews, look and know your intended use case and then see if that person tested it and how it's going to work in your use case, intended use case. The second one, absolutely, this is honestly takes place over number 1 for me, but this is not in any sequential order. Knowing your list of non-negotiables and watching reviews with that in mind. Kind of piggybacks off of the first one, but not for real, because your list of non-negotiables is saying, I need it to have 4K. I need it to not have the jelly 4K, because maybe you are doing a bunch of whip pan stuff all the time. You need a headphone port. You need a microphone port. It needs to have a flip out screen based on what you're doing. Like these list non-negotiables. The camera could be Bee's Knees Hall of Fame on the inside, but if it misses any one of those things where you cannot have, where it just don't have it, like for example, cameras used to come out and not have a microphone port, not a headphone port, the mic port wasn't there. You had cameras just like that. This would be great if it had a microphone port. You had people velcroing audio recorders like the Zoom H1 to the cameras, trying to make it work and syncing it in post. It just became a nightmare. You can't deal with that stuff. As a content creating entrepreneur, this investment actually does need to yield a return. And for as much as cameras and all that stuff costs, I need to know my list of non-negotiables. What am I not willing to sacrifice? And when I'm watching a review video, what is happening on my list of non-negotiables? Can we check this off, or is it a big red X? This is a big one for me. This like takes precedence over everything else. The third one is checking the price on lenses that you actually would buy. I had to completely rethink how I approach buying lenses, because going from Sony APS-C to Sony full frame is not quite the same. There's actually way more APS-C lenses that fit the kind of stuff I do more often than full frame, because the full frame is dealing with photographers and videographers, cinematographers. I'm like in somewhere in between those, and I'm doing like a small subset of a different kind of video. So I don't need a big long telephoto zoom lens thing. There's handy when you're in an event or something, but I don't need that. I need something like the Tamron 11 to 20 millimeter f2.8 lens, but full frame. So it's like, what is that version on a full frame camera that's actually meeting all those requirements? Still super wide, f2.8, small and lightweight. And so now I'm needing to rethink and price adjust for maybe what I would buy on APS-C is this, to avoid any of the cropping situations and all that extra other stuff, clear and zoom. If I just want to pop the lens on and have it work, what would that be? So the more my friends and I started to look at what lenses would we buy going from APS-C to full frame for the first time, knowing the Sony ecosystem is one thing, but the lenses, it differs. We now had to really think back, what are some lenses I would buy? And so I did a second video that I talked about those lenses. If you're considering like at some point maybe getting an A7C Mark II, or if you know the ZV-E1 will work fine for you, picking up that camera, I'll put a link in the description and in the info card up above. But that lets you know come day one, what's your first lens that you're going to get? What are lenses that you want to invest in down the road? And maybe even considering renting some lenses, because that's one of the surefire ways. I like to see if something's going to work for me or not, just rent it. And we'll put something on the screen to let you know the promo code and the link in the description if you want to rent lenses, and you can get like $25 off your first rental, or at least 15% if it's not. I'll just put it down below. The fourth one is knowing and realistically approaching, are the limitations of the camera actually going to impact me or not? A lot of people are really concerned with the Sony ZV-E1 having overheating problems, and it makes it seem like after 10 to 15 minutes of recording 4K high quality video, the camera's going to overheat, shut down. It's completely unreliable, which is not necessarily wrong maybe for some people in certain environments, but it's not applicable to me almost at all for the kind of work that I'm doing. I don't need to necessarily record in the S or the S, what is it, like SI, I think is the highest one, the all intra whatever. That's great that it's in the camera. Should I want to use it, I can, but that's not my necessarily goal for videos like this. There are occasions where I will want the highest capacity of what the camera is capable of, but that's not for like a podcast recording. It's not necessarily for my regular recorded videos, at least not right now in the work that I'm doing. But 4K 60 is something I've been wanting more in my camera. Having the 10-bit in certain situations and a camera that just can handle the sensor, at least better dynamic range, is something that I've been wanting to have more in the camera. Going ahead and moving over to full frame just because I know APS-C was not going to be well kept up, over the years, it was going to happen anyway. But are these limitations anything that would stop me from doing 95 to 99% of what I'm doing? The answer is no. So for me, ZV-E1 is a freaking bangarang Peter type of camera because I'm not sitting in a room that's 80 to 90 degrees hot. There is airflow. Most of the time, if you see in the vlogs, the fan is on. It's because I get hot. I'm not trying to have the Whitney Houston lip sweat situation. The air conditioner is on. I turn it lower when I am doing recording because there's a bunch of electronics in here. It has nothing to do just with this camera. We actually run a lot of stuff in the business. I have a lot of stuff in here. I want the room cool, so when I'm recording, I don't have that problem. Why? Because even back in the DSLR days when I first started recording, I used to be so sweaty when I was done because it was hot as hell. And I'm like, why am I suffering like this? I'm turning the air on, I'm turning the fan on, and it'll make it cooler, so I'm cool, the electronics is cool, everybody's good. If you record in the Serengeti, if you're recording in a climate that's even just super hot, St. Louis gets hot and it gets humid, but not like that. When you've seen me outside sweating like that in a video? You haven't. So occasionally will I be outside doing stuff? For sure. But most of the time, any talks that I'm giving, any environments that I'm in, and any content that I'm recording, I'm not in some hell hot heat situation all the time. So are those limitations going to bother me? No. Do I wish that they were just not even a factor? And honestly, should they not even be a factor on a camera that costs this much? You're 1,000% right in wanting that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no honest excuse. Side note rant here. Yes, it could be said that this camera, for as much as it costs, still being relatively cheap compared to other ones in the lineup, that it shouldn't cost that, like it shouldn't have those problems. I agree with you on that. But are those problems things that I'm going to run into? Even 80% of people in my audience are going to run into? Probably not. Because why? You're in your home office, you're in spaces where you have air conditioner, there is airflow, so you don't necessarily need all the whatevers all the time, maybe. It's like, it depends, but I'm off my soapbox on that one. And the fifth one is something I used to do a long time ago, and that is choosing based on price alone. Price is a factor in getting what you need and getting the right something that you need in order for you to make the best videos possible. But it shouldn't be the main thing. Price used to be the first way that I decided, what am I going to buy? But it does make more sense to just wait until you have that extra $200 to $300, which is all the clients that I work with, all the one-on-one calls that I had, all the events that I've spoken at digitally and physically. People are usually anywhere from $200 to $300 in difference of the price of what they have or what they're willing to spend between a camera that doesn't have everything that they need, because maybe you looked at your list of non-negotiables and you start taking stuff off to make the list fit the price instead of looking at what camera that maybe is just like $200 or $300 more is actually going to solve the problems that I have and the needs that I want. Like a $500 camera is very different than an $800 and $900 camera It's a big difference in like little features and stuff like that. Granted, that's not a cheap price. Like that's a lot of money, right? But are we investing or are we wasting money when it comes to gear? So I used to just pick solely based on price, but I learned to start going based off my list of non-negotiables first, and then seeing what's available in this lineup that best suits me. And is this something I'm willing to make that extra investment in order to save myself time, energy, and money when I'm doing the work that I do? When I changed these 5 things, I'm telling you, my life got so much better and so much easier when it came to creating, because it doesn't necessarily mean you need the most expensive thing or you have to go bees knees Hall of Fame, top of the line, best of best, Sony A1, whatever. Like, you don't have to do all of that, but it lets you know, maybe I need to go a little bit higher, stop going based on price alone, and just go based off what's going to best solve the problems that I have now and future solve problems that I may get to based on my goals. So what's the lesson that you learned in the process of creating content and videos? Doesn't have to be necessarily similar to this one, but what's a good lesson that if you were going to share with somebody that you would share? Let me know down in the comments down below. With that, guys, with passion, I'll see you on the next video somewhere here on the interwebs or on the channel. Peace. Are you an entrepreneur struggling to get your brand noticed through video content? Look no further. The One Right Video is the ultimate guide to creating videos that will amplify your brand and grow your business. It's jam-packed with practical tips and strategies to help entrepreneurs just like you succeed in video content creation and be among the first to get your hands on a copy of the One Right Video. Go to onerightvideo.com.